Most destroyed worlds and games are just decoration. You get broken buildings, ash in the sky, dead machines, and a few sad looking ruins in the background. It looks cool, but a lot of the time that's all it is. A mood board, texture pack, a way to tell you, hey, this world just had a bad day. But Armored Core 6 does something a little different. Rubicon is not beautiful because it is clean, and it's not beautiful because it is peaceful. It is beautiful because it looks like a world that already survived the end of everything. And the tragedy is that people came back to finish taking what was left. That's what makes the story hit harder. The game is not just saying, look at this destroyed planet. It is saying, ambition burned this place. This place was sealed away after a disaster. This place still has people living inside the damage. And now corporations are crawling back because there's still profit under the ash. That is the part I think gets overlooked when people talk about Armored Core 6. The destroyed world is not background, it is emotional context. Rubicon is not just post-apocalyptic. A lot of games treat post-apocalyptic worlds as a simple aesthetic. Throw in some rust, some smoke, break a few towers, make the sky look sick, and then you're done. Rubicon feels different because the destruction has a cause, and that cause is tied to the themes of the game. Coral was supposed to push humanity forward, better technology, communication, a new step for civilization, basic sci-fi, progress pitch. And then it went wrong. The fires of Ibis did not just damage Rubicon, they engulfed the planet, and thereby star systems in flames and storms. That is how you get the burning star system. So when you look at Rubicon, you're not looking at random decay, you're looking at failed progress, and that matters. Because the world is not ugly in the normal sense. It has frozen wastelands, massive industrial towers, orbital structures, launch platforms, coral-lit skies, and long stretches of metal that make the planet feel huge and empty at the same time. It feels like a monument to a future that got burned before regular people ever got to benefit from it. And this is where Armored Core 6 starts getting under your skin. Because this is not just a world after disaster. This is a world after someone promised advancement, safety, power, and results. Then the bill came due. The beauty works because it is unsafe. Rubicon is still contaminated like 50 years later. That one fact changes the way I look at the whole game. You're not walking through a dead museum, you're not exploring some peaceful ruin where nature has taken over and healed everything. This is not one of those, soft, pretty apocalypse settings where the vines wrap around the buildings and the game quietly asks you to feel safe. No, Rubicon is just sealed off. It's contaminated, hostile, and still alive with danger. That makes the beauty feel heavier. When I first played Armored Core 6, I remember paying attention to the machines first. That's the obvious hook. You're flying through the air in a giant weaponized metal body, dodging missiles, swapping parts, and trying to survive one more contract. It is easy to focus only on the speed and the combat, but after a while the planet starts pushing back into your attention. You see the size of the structures. You see how empty some of these areas feel. You hear the radio chatter. You watch corporations move through this place like they are not stepping into a disaster site. And that is when the setting starts doing something more cool. It starts accusing everybody. Because Rubicon does not look like a place that needs saving in a clean, heroic way. It looks like a place that has already been used, abandoned, locked away, and then reopened the second someone found value in it again. And that is brutally familiar. Not because we live on Rubicon, but because we know this pattern. A place gets damaged. The people inside it deal with the consequences. Then someone with money shows up and calls it an opportunity. That is the system critical part of Armored Core 6 that I think deserves more attention. The world is not just ruined, it's being utilized again. But even after all this, Rubicon is scarred, not dead. This distinction is crucial. A dead world is scenery. A scarred world creates pressure. Rubicon still has survivors. The Rubiconians are not just some abstract group mentioned in the lore. They are descendants of the people who originally developed the planet. They live inside the aftermath. They deal with hostile conditions. They are trapped under the control of the Planetary Closure Administration. That makes the destroyed beauty more than visual design. It turns the entire planet into a prison with a skyline. That is a hard image to shake, because when you look across Rubicon, everything feels massive. The towers, machines, factories, open spaces, industrial skeletons stretching into the distance. But the people living there do not feel free. The world is huge. Their options are small. That's good storytelling. And Armored Core 6 does not need a character to sit you down for 10 minutes and explain all of this with dramatic music playing. It lets the world carry the pressure. You feel it through the mission structure. You feel it through the briefings, through the radio chatter. You feel it through the way everyone talks about Coral, like it's a resource first and a consequence second. That is the real tragedy. Rubicon is not empty. It has people, history, it has pain. But most of the powerful factions treat it like a battlefield, a mine, or a locked storage unit that they finally found the key to. That makes every contract feel colder. You're not just fighting on a cool sci-fi planet. You're working inside someone else's wound. This is where the destroyed world becomes even stronger. The corporations do not return to Rubicon because they care about what happened there. They return because Coral resurfaces. That's pretty much it. A miracle substance comes back into play, and suddenly everyone finds a way through the blockade. Suddenly the sealed-off planet is worth entering again. Suddenly the old disaster site becomes a business opportunity. It's brazen, arrogant, and dumb in the exact way powerful systems are often dumb. Because the lesson of Rubicon should be obvious. Coral already caused a disaster so severe that the planet and nearby star systems were consumed by flames and storms. The environment was contaminated. The world was sealed away, and what do corporations do? They come back for another round. That is why Rubicon's beauty feels tragic instead of just cool. The ruins make the greed look worse. A corporation invading a blank battlefield is one thing. A corporation invading a scarred disaster site becomes the same dangerous resource. Well, because the same dangerous resource resurfaced is another thing entirely. That is not ambition. That is hunger with a legal department. And the game does not need to over-explain it. It simply puts you in the middle of it. You take contracts, you get paid, you fight for people who see the planet as a prize. And slowly, the question becomes less about who hired you and more about where your actions are helping them take. That is the kind of story that I like. Not because it tells you exactly how to feel, but because it puts pressure on your role. You are not some clean hero. You are not just a villain either. You are a weapon inside a machine that was already running before you arrived. Another thing that I like is that Armored Core 6 also utilizes scale extremely well. You are piloting a giant mech. You're fast, you're armed, you can fly through missiles, tear through squads, delete heavy targets, and survive things that would erase a regular person. Yet Rubicon still makes you feel small. Now that's kind of hard to pull off. A lot of games give you a huge character or some kind of huge machine that accidentally shrink the world around you. Everything becomes a playground for the power fantasy. Armored Core 6 gives you power, but it does not let the world bow to you. The industrial spaces are massive. The verticality matters. The trenches, the towers, launch platforms, mining structures, and open combat zones make your AC feel dangerous, but not dominant over the planet itself. You are big, but Rubicon is bigger. That does something to the tone. It keeps the story from becoming simple wish fulfillment. You are not just a cool machine flying through, pretty ruins. You are a small part of a larger extraction system, moving through spaces built by forces much bigger than you. And that is why the beauty of the world uplifts the story. It gives the game weight. The metal, smoke, distance, and silence, and harsh industrial design all communicate the same thing. This place had a history before you. This place will have consequences after you. You are just the latest weapon passing through. Armored Core 6 does not tell its story like a traditional cinematic game. You do not get constant cutscenes. You do not get long emotional speeches every few minutes. You get missions, briefings, radio chatter, combat pressure, small pieces of context. For some players that can feel too minimal. I kind of understand that. If someone wants a story that grabs them by the shirt and explains every emotional beat, Armored Core 6 is not always built for that. It asks you to pay attention differently. But that is exactly why Rubicon matters so much, because the environment has to do part of the storytelling. The destroyed world becomes one of the main ways the game communicates mood, history, and consequence. Every frozen wasteland tells you this planet is not healed. Every industrial structure tells you this place was built around extraction and control. Every corelit sky tells you the same thing everyone wants is beautiful, dangerous, and not fully understood. Every quiet stretch between fights gives the world room to breathe. This is not empty space, this is pressure. I call myself doing something in Armored Core that I do in very few action games that I play. I just finish a fight and just look at the space around me for a second. Not because the game was giving me a collectible or something. Not because there was a quest marker, but because the world had this strange cold presence to it. I mean, that matters to me. Because when a game makes you pause without forcing you to pause, the art direction is doing real work. Now, I can already hear the objections. Some people are going to say, no, it's not that deep. It's just a cool mech game with ruined sci-fi maps. And on some level, sure. Armored Core 6 is absolutely a cool mech game. The combat is the main draw for a lot of people. The customization is addictive. The boss fights are brutal. The whole game is built around speed, pressure, and mechanical execution. But that does not cancel out the story layer. It supports it. A game can be mechanically strong and thematically sharp at the same time. In fact, that is why Armored Core 6 works so well. The gameplay makes you feel like a weapon. The world makes you question what that weapon is being aimed at. That is the difference. If Rubicon were just a generic sci-fi arena, the story would lose power. The contracts would feel colder in a flat way. The factions would feel more abstract. The whole thing would still be fun, but it would not have the same emotional residue. Rubicon gives the game a memory, a hostile one, a damaged one, a memory everyone keeps trying to monetize. The lesson here is simple. Destroyed worlds should not just look destroyed. They should mean something. Too many games utilize ruined settings as visual shortcuts. They want the emotional weight of collapse without building the cause and effect that makes collapse matter. Armored Core 6 avoids that trap. Rubicon's destruction is tied to ambition. Its contamination is tied to consequence. Its survivors are tied to moral pressure. The corporations are tied to exploitation. Its scale is tied to your place in the system. That is why the beauty works. It is not beauty for beauty's sake. It is beauty with a debt attached. And that is the kind of world building more games need to study. Not every game needs a giant codex. Not every game needs characters explaining the lore every 5 seconds. But the world needs to carry meaning. The building should tell you who had power. The ruins should tell you what failed. The battlefield should tell you who paid the price. So the sky should not just be pretty. It should say something. Armored Core 6 gets that. Rubicon looks like a dead industrial god left behind in the snow, and every faction in the game is trying to cut it open for parts. That's harsh, but it's also why this world sticks. The bottom line is this, I think. The beauty of Rubicon is not soft. It is not comforting. It is not there to make the apocalypse look cool for a trailer. Rubicon is beautiful because it is scarred. It is beautiful because the scale makes you feel small. It is beautiful because the world still has people inside the damage. And it is tragic because the same forces that helped create the disaster are back to profit from what survived. That is where Armored Core 6 does so well. It turns destruction into context. It turns ruin into pressure. It turns a battlefield into a warning. And the warning is basic. When a system treats a wounded world like an opportunity, it will keep digging until there is nothing left to take.
Oh, hey, glad you're still here. I've, just finished syncing the next set of files for you. They're right over there on the screen. Take a look and, catch ya in the next one.